The year was 2287 when humanity first reached the stars. Captain Nathan Brooks stood inside the Andromeda station, watching the alien representatives gather around a massive table made of crystalline material that glowed with inner light. The station floated in deep space, far from any star, and it served as the meeting place for the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. Nathan had traveled for 3 months to reach this place, carrying humanity's hope for peace and trade with the wider universe. The Vexthari entered first. Their bodies were made of living crystal that shifted colors as they moved, blues and purples flowing across their forms like water. Their leader, Keeper Vexthar, stood taller than the others, and his presence made the air feel heavy. Behind him came the Korvax, beings of metal and flesh combined together in ways that looked wrong to human eyes. Their bodies hummed with mechanical sounds, and red lights blinked where their eyes should be. The Selene arrived last, creatures of pure psychic energy held inside protective shells that looked like floating clouds of silver mist. Commander Li Wei, Earth's official ambassador, stepped forward and began her speech. She spoke about humanity's long struggle on Earth, the terrible world that had taught them to survive anything. She spoke about human dreams of joining the galactic community as equals, of sharing knowledge and resources, of building trade routes that would benefit everyone. Her words were careful and respectful. She had practiced this speech 1,000 times during the journey through space. The alien representatives listened, but Nathan could see something in their faces that worried him. It was not respect. It was not interest. It was something closer to how humans might look at insects. The Vexthari began to laugh, a sound like breaking glass. Keeper Vexthar stood up and raised his hand. Silence fell across the chamber. "You are slaves," Vexthar said simply. His voice carried no anger, just a statement of fact. "You are primitive creatures from a weak world. Your technology is thousands of years behind ours. Your bodies are fragile. Your minds are limited. The Galactic Council has made its decision. Humanity will be declared a slave species. All humans will be captured and distributed among the great empires to work in our factories, our mines, and our colonies. This decision is final." Nathan felt the blood drain from his face. He looked at Commander Li Wei, and he saw the moment her hope died. The other council members voted immediately, one after another. 17 voices said the same word: approved. There was no discussion, no negotiation. The vote took less than 2 minutes. Keeper Vexthar continued. "The Vexthari fleet will depart for Earth immediately. They will arrive in 4 weeks. Prepare your people for capture. Resistance is useless. You cannot fight the galactic empires. You will lose, and you will die. Surrender is your only choice. If you resist, we will kill everyone on your planet and take only the dead bodies for genetic study. You have 4 weeks. Nathan's mind raced. His heart pounded so hard he thought it might break his ribs. He had to warn Earth. He had to tell humanity what was coming. He looked at Commander Li Wei, and she gave him a small nod. She understood. She would buy him time. Nathan turned and ran toward the docking bay where the human ship waited. Behind him, he heard Vexthar's cold laugh. The alien did not bother to stop him. Why would he? In his mind, humans were already property, already defeated. They could not escape their fate. Nathan pushed through the station corridors, his heart pounding. He reached the docking bay and sprinted toward the ship. He screamed at the pilot to start the engines. The young pilot, Lieutenant Marcus Chun, did not ask questions. He began the launch sequence immediately. Nathan threw himself into the command chair as the ship shook and roared to life. The distance between the Andromeda station and Earth was vast. Even traveling at the fastest speeds humanity had achieved, it would take 3 weeks to return home. Nathan had 1 week before the Vexthari fleet would launch. He worked the communication systems frantically, trying to send a warning message through the quantum transmitter. It would arrive before him, maybe 6 hours before him, if everything worked right. On Earth, President Kevin Harrison sat in the Situation Room beneath the Pentagon. Around him were the world's best military leaders. The message from Captain Brooks arrived like a bomb. For a moment, nobody spoke. The world's governments had argued for years about whether space exploration was worth the money. Some people said humans should focus on Earth's problems. Others said exploring space was humanity's destiny. This message answered the debate forever. There would be no more time for arguments. General Patricia Summers, the head of Earth's military command, stood up. She was a hard woman with gray eyes and shoulders that never seemed to relax. "We have 1 week," she said. "We need to mobilize everything. This is not a drill. This is not a test. We are under attack." President Harrison nodded. "What do we have?" he asked. "Conventional weapons, sir," General Summers said. "Nuclear missiles, laser defense systems, the new space stations on the Moon and Mars. But against a galactic empire? We have nothing. We are children with sticks fighting adults with guns." "Then we will have to be smarter than them," Harrison said. "Send out the mobilization order. Every military unit, every scientist, every engineer. We will throw everything at this problem. We will find a way." General Summers picked up the phone and began giving orders. Within hours, every military base on Earth was on high alert. Scientists from around the world were gathered in secret laboratories. Engineers began working on designs they had never considered before. Weapons experts studied alien technology from the salvaged probe that Earth had captured years before. The world's governments stopped arguing and started working together. When Captain Nathan Brooks finally arrived at Earth, he found a planet transformed. The skies over major cities were covered with new defense systems. Military ships that had been in dry dock for years were being prepared for launch. Soldiers trained day and night. Scientists worked without sleep. Humanity had 3 weeks left before the invasion fleet arrived. President Harrison met with Captain Brooks in person. "Tell me everything," Harrison said. Nathan described the council meeting, the cold way they dismissed humanity, the speed of the vote. He described the Vextari and their absolute confidence in victory. When he finished, Harrison leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes for a long moment. "They think we are weak," Harrison said finally. "They think we are primitive. They think we will surrender because we have no choice." "We do not have much choice," General Summers said quietly. Harrison opened his eyes. "No, we have one choice. We will fight. And we will win." Around the room, military leaders and scientists nodded. Nobody knew how they would win, but they knew they had to try. On Earth, in the final days before the invasion, humanity prepared for war. They did not know if they would survive, but they knew that surrender meant the end of everything they had built, everything they had fought for across their entire history. They would make their stand on the harsh world that had made them strong. The countdown had begun. The Vextari invasion fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel and appeared above Earth like a storm of metal and destruction. 300 ships hung in the sky, each one the size of a small mountain. They were covered in weapons ports, and their hulls glowed with energy. The commander of the fleet, Imperator Keshtar, looked down at the blue planet below and felt only contempt. These primitive humans would break like glass. The first wave of invasion began at dawn. Shuttle ships descended through Earth's atmosphere, heading for major military installations. The Vextari expected minimal resistance. They expected human soldiers to surrender or run. Instead, when the shuttles reached low altitude, they encountered something they did not expect at all: a storm. Major Lucas Thompson had positioned human defense teams in the mountains surrounding the largest military base. He had studied Earth's weather patterns his entire life. He knew that a hurricane was forming in the Atlantic, and he knew he could push that storm directly over the landing zone using the new weather manipulation systems. The technology was untested and dangerous, but it was all humanity had. The hurricane's winds reached 300 kilometers per hour. The HFY shuttles, designed for calm space and artificial landing zones on other worlds, were not built to handle such violence. Several ships spun out of control and crashed into the mountains. Others managed to land, but their systems were damaged. When the HFY soldiers emerged, they found themselves not in an orderly military base ready to surrender, but in the middle of a disaster zone. Human soldiers attacked from everywhere. They came from tunnels, from underground bases, from positions hidden in the mountains themselves. The HFY had superior weapons, but they could not find enemies that moved like ghosts. For every human soldier killed, 3 or 4 HFY fell. The aliens had never fought an enemy that used their own environment as a weapon. Major Thompson coordinated the defense from an underground bunker. Screens showed him the battle from 100 different angles. He watched HFY soldiers struggle in Earth's gravity, struggle in the rain and wind, struggle against an enemy that seemed to appear from nowhere and vanish like smoke. He gave orders constantly, moving human forces to strike at weak points, pulling soldiers back before the aliens could surround them. After 8 hours of fighting, the HFY commander ordered the first wave to retreat. They had lost 97 ships and thousands of soldiers. The humans had lost 500 soldiers. It was not a fair trade, but it was something the HFY had never experienced before. They had lost. They had retreated. Keeper Vexter received the news on his command ship with cold fury. This was impossible. Human technology was too primitive. Human bodies were too weak. There must be an error in the report. But the numbers did not lie. Nearly a quarter of his invasion force was destroyed, and the humans still fought. Deploy the second wave, Vexter commanded. Use maximum force. I want the human military command centers destroyed. I want their cities in ruins. This ends today. The second wave hit harder. This time, the HFY used orbital strikes, weapons that fired from space and destroyed entire city blocks. They used biological weapons designed to attack human nerve systems. They landed assault forces and coordinated attacks across multiple continents. For a brief moment, it seemed like the HFY would overwhelm Earth through sheer force. But humanity had been preparing for this. Engineer Hannah Pierce had worked day and night since Captain Brooks' warning to create defense systems. She took alien technology from salvaged probes, combined it with human engineering, and built rapid-fire defense platforms that could shoot down incoming weapons. Her systems were not as refined or elegant as HFY technology, but they worked. They were brutal and effective and fast. When orbital strikes came down on Tokyo, Hannah's system shot them out of the sky. When biological weapons rained on New York, human medical teams were ready with developed countermeasures. When the HFY tried to land forces in Europe, they found prepared positions and human soldiers who had been trained to fight in groups, to adapt to changing situations, to never give up even when the odds looked impossible. Lieutenant Gregory Watson worked in the communications center beneath the Atlantic. He was young, only 24 years old, but his mind was sharp. He had studied the HFY technology that humans had captured, and he had found something nobody else noticed, a pattern in their communication network. The pattern repeated every 47 seconds. That meant it was automated, controlled by a computer system rather than by an individual. Gregory brought his discovery to General Summers. If we hit their main communication hubs at exactly the right moment, Right after the pattern repeats, we can disrupt their entire fleet coordination system, he said. They will lose contact with each other. General Summers studied the data. It was risky. If Gregory was wrong, the attack would fail and humanity would lose their one good chance. But if he was right, they could turn the tide of the entire war. Do it, she said. Gregory worked for 18 hours straight. He coordinated with military forces on the moon, in orbital stations, and in submarines beneath Earth's oceans. He calculated the exact timing needed to hit multiple communication hubs simultaneously. When everything was ready, he gave the order. The strikes came all at once. Laser weapons from the moon hit a primary station. Missile strikes from submarines hit a secondary station. Orbital weapons hit backup systems. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, gradually, the reports came in. The Vexthari fleet was losing coordination. The ships were no longer responding to commands from their central authority. Without unified command, the fleet became a collection of individual ships fighting for survival instead of organized military units. The second invasion wave collapsed. The remaining Vexthari ships broke formation and retreated to regroup. They had lost more than half their fleet. Earth's forces had suffered terrible casualties, but they had not broken. They had not surrendered. They had fought back against an enemy that had come from the stars to enslave them, and they had made the enemy bleed. On the Vexthari command ship, Keeper Vexthar realized something that terrified him. These humans would not break. They would fight until every last one of them died. They would turn their own world against the invaders. They were not primitive property to be collected and enslaved. They were a warrior species from a world so harsh and deadly that it had made them nearly invulnerable. General Summers stood in the Situation Room and watched the screens showing the retreating Vexthari fleet. Around her, soldiers and officers began to cheer. They had survived the invasion. They had won the first battle. But more ships would come. The war was far from over. She turned to President Harrison. "We need to build more weapons," she said. "We need to prepare for a third wave and a fourth, as many as it takes. And we need to build them bigger and faster than before." President Harrison nodded. He looked at the screens showing Earth, still burning in places, still bleeding, but still fighting. Humanity would not be slaves. Humanity would not surrender. The Death World had taught its children well. 2 months had passed since the first Vexthari invasion attempt. Earth had rebuilt some of its defenses and prepared new weapons. The planet was a fortress now, with military installations everywhere. But everyone knew the third wave would be bigger and more devastating than the first two combined. Humanity needed help, and they needed it soon. Ambassador Sophia Romano received a strange message on a quantum frequency that Earth was not supposed to have access to. The message came from a civilization called the Tethys Collective. The Tethys said they had been watching humanity's fight against the Galactic Council, and they believed humans deserved protection. They wanted to meet with Earth's leaders to discuss an alliance. The meeting took place on a neutral station near Mars. Sophia traveled with Captain Nathan Brooks and several military advisors. When they arrived, they met Keeper Thelm, the leader of the Tethys Collective. Thelm was ancient, older than human civilization by millions of years. His body was composed of crystalline structures similar to the Vexthari, but his appearance was gentle, almost musical. He moved slowly, and when he spoke, his words seemed to carry deep wisdom. "We have watched humanity struggle," Thelm said. His voice was like wind through crystal caves. "For 1,000 of your years, the Galactic Council has dominated the lesser species. They have enslaved, they have conquered, they have destroyed entire civilizations that refuse to bow before them. We Tethys have tried to stop them, but we are few, and they are many. When you humans arrived at the Andromeda Station, We were surprised. We expected you to surrender immediately. Instead, you refused. You fought back against impossible odds. Sophia leaned forward. Why does humanity's struggle matter to you? She asked. Because you are something we have not seen in millions of years, Thel answered. You are something rare and precious. You have moral courage. You choose what is right over what is easy. You fight not to conquer, but to protect your people and your home. This is a quality most civilizations lose after they reach the stars. Most species become consumed by the desire for power and expansion. You humans are still capable of sacrifice and mercy. General Summers, who sat beside Sophia, was suspicious. What do you want from us? She asked. No one helps without wanting something in return. Thel nodded slowly. You are wise to be cautious. Yes, we want something from you. We want you to be different from the empires that have tried to enslave you. If we help you win this war, you must promise not to become the next great empire. You must promise to protect the weak, not to dominate them. You must promise to build a galaxy based on equality and justice instead of power and fear. The meeting continued for hours. Sophia and Captain Brooks asked detailed questions. They wanted to know how much help the Tethys would provide, how many ships and weapons would arrive, what timeline they were working with. Thel answered all their questions honestly. The Tethys could provide 30 capital ships, advanced weapons, military advisors, and training for human forces. But the Tethys could not fight Earth's main battles. That fight had to be humanity's own. The Tethys would help support and strengthen Earth's forces. But humans had to prove they could stand on their own. When Sophia returned to Earth and presented the offer to the Leadership Council, opinions were divided. General Patricia Summers wanted to refuse. If we accept help from the Tethys, we become dependent on them, she argued. Once we win this war, they will own us through gratitude and obligation. We will have traded one master for another. But Captain Nathan Brooks disagreed. We are dying, he said simply. The Council will keep sending fleets until every human is dead or enslaved. We can stand alone and lose, or we can accept help from people who believe in our right to be free. The Tethys are not asking us to serve them. They are asking us to be better than our enemies. That is not enslavement. That is hope. President Harrison listened to both sides and made a decision. We accept the Tethys offer, he said. But we do more than that. We reach out to other species that the Galactic Council has enslaved. We tell them about a new way, a better way. We build an alliance based on freedom and justice instead of fear and domination. Sophia took the lead on this new mission. She traveled through space, meeting with representatives from species the Council had crushed beneath its heel. She met the Zephyr, an insectoid species that had been forced into labor for 300 years. She met the Meridian, crystalline beings who had survived a Veshthari genocide that nearly destroyed their entire civilization. She met the Keshful, aquatic beings who had lost their homeworld to Council expansion. Each species had a different reason to join the alliance, but they shared one thing. They wanted freedom. They wanted their right to exist and to make their own choices. Sophia told them about Earth, about humans who had fought impossible odds and refused to surrender. She told them that if they stood together, united by belief in freedom instead of divided by individual power, they could challenge even the great empires. One by one, species joined the alliance. Ships began arriving at Earth, bringing new technology and new fighters. The Zephyr brought advanced biological weapons that the Veshthari had stolen from them and could now be used against the Council. The Meridian brought ancient knowledge about Veshthari weaknesses that they had discovered during their own survival. The Keshful brought underwater technology and the ability to coordinate defenses from beneath Earth's oceans, but not everything went smoothly. Inside Earth's government, There were arguments about what would happen after the war. Some military leaders wanted to use the alliance to dominate other species. Some politicians wanted to claim the technology from defeated council members. Some generals wanted vengeance against the Vexthari and the other species that had voted to enslave. Humanity. Captain Nathan Brooks called a private meeting with President Harrison. "We are making a mistake," Brooks said. "We promised the Tethys that we would not become like the empires we fight. But our soldiers want revenge. Our scientists want dominance through superior technology. Our politicians want power. We are becoming exactly what the Tethys warned us not to become." Harrison looked tired. The weight of keeping a planet unified during invasion was crushing him. "What do you suggest?" he asked. "We establish rules now, before the victory," Brooks said. "We decide what kind of civilization humanity will be in the new galaxy. We decide that we will be protectors, not conquerors. We decide that we will use our strength to help others become free, not to control them. We make a charter that the entire alliance can follow. If we wait until after we win, it will be too late. Power changes people, sir. We need to choose who we are before we have the power to enforce that choice." President Harrison thought for a long time. Then he picked up a communication device and began calling the leaders of the alliance species. He called them together for a meeting on Earth. And there, in a valley near where the great civilizations of humanity had built their largest cities, representatives from humans and 7 different alien species gathered to write the Charter of Free Peoples. The charter stated that no species could be enslaved or forced to serve others. It stated that all species had the right to self-governance and the right to choose their own path. It stated that the members of the alliance would work together to protect these rights, not to expand their own power. It established that any species that violated these principles would face the combined force of the alliance. When the charter was finished and signed, Sophia stood on the platform and looked at the gathered representatives. They were different in every way possible. They looked different, thought different, valued different things. But standing together, united by a single principle, they were stronger than any empire that had ever existed. The alliance was not perfect. There were still arguments and disagreements. But it was based on something the Galactic Council had never understood. It was based on hope and shared values, not on fear and domination. The Vexthari had thought they understood power. They were about to learn that they were wrong. General Summers watched from the back of the gathering and smiled slightly. She was still a warrior, still ready to fight, still willing to kill to protect humanity. But she also understood something that few military leaders ever learned, that the strongest alliance is not the one with the most weapons, but the one with the clearest reason to stand together. And now, standing in this valley on a death world that had taught its children how to survive and how to stand with others, that alliance was ready to fight. The Sovereign Fleet departed from Earth with tremendous force. 500 ships flew together through space, a coalition of human vessels, Tethys warships, Zephyr fighters, Meridian cruisers, and Keshval submarine-like craft adapted for space combat. They were not the largest fleet in the galaxy, but they were the most united. They had trained together, fought together, and bled together. Every member of the Alliance knew what they were fighting for and why they had to win. Captain Nathan Brooks commanded the fleet from the flagship, a massive human ship named the Columbia. Beside him stood Admiral Patricia Summers, who had transformed from a military commander into a leader of an interspecies alliance. The journey to Nexus Station took 3 weeks of faster-than-light travel. Every second of the journey felt heavy with weight and consequence. Nexus Station was the heart of the Galactic Council's power. It was constructed around a star, using the star's energy to power the entire massive complex. It contained the Council Chamber, the administrative headquarters for 17 different empires, military shipyards, research facilities, and living quarters for thousands of aliens. It was a city in space, a fortress of power that had never been seriously threatened before. When the Sovereign Fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel near Nexus Station, the station's defenders were shocked. They sent out warning signals and began launching defense ships. The Council had heard rumors about Earth building an alliance, but they had not taken the threat seriously. Humans and their primitive allies against the combined might of the galaxy's greatest powers. It seemed impossible. The first attack came fast. Hundreds of Council warships launched from Nexus Station, creating a wall of metal and weapons between the Sovereign Fleet and the station itself. The Vexthari wanted to push the invaders away from the station and protect their home. But they had made a mistake. They had not counted on the Sovereign Fleet's speed and coordination. Captain Brooks gave the order to attack, and the battle began in earnest. Human ships moved with surprising agility, weaving between Council warships with precision that came from adapting to Earth's chaotic environment. Zephyr fighters, smaller and faster than any Council vessel, struck at weak points and vanished before the enemy could retaliate. Meridian ships, capable of manipulating gravitational fields, pulled Council warships out of formation and destroyed them while they were confused and disoriented. The battle raged for hours. Ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light. Thousands of soldiers died on both sides. The Council's fleets began to crumble as they realized they faced something they did not understand. The Sovereign Fleet did not fight like traditional military forces. They did not line up information and exchange fire until one side won. They adapted, they improvised. They used the strengths and weaknesses of their different species to create strategies the Council could not predict. After 6 hours of continuous combat, the Vexthari fleet commander requested a retreat. He sent a message to Keeper Vexter in Nexus Station. The outer defenses were failing, and the main station itself was under direct threat. The commander asked for permission to fall back to the station and prepare for a final stand. Vexter refused. He was an ancient being who had ruled for 10,000 years, and his pride would not allow him to accept defeat. He ordered the fleets to stand their ground and fight to the last ship. But the commander knew that was suicide. He ordered the retreat anyway and tried to save as many ships as he could. General Patricia Summers watched the Council's fleet break apart. She had seen retreat before, understood what it meant. She turned to Captain Brooks. "They are failing," she said. "We can push to the station now. We can end this." Brooks nodded, but he hesitated. "Send down the diplomatic team," he said. "I want Li Wei and her people to go to the station. We need to try to end this without destroying Nexus Station completely. If we can force surrender, we can save lives." Admiral Summers frowned. "They are still fighting," she said. "A diplomatic team will be killed." "Send them," Brooks said. "They are brave people. They understand the risk. If there is any chance to stop this without bloodshed, we have to take it." Commander Li Wei volunteered immediately when she heard Brooks' request. She had been waiting for this moment since the day. She stood in the Andromeda Station and watched humanity's future get decided by creatures who saw humans as property. She gathered a small team of diplomats and military officers, and they boarded a shuttle to descend to Nexus Station. The shuttle crossed through space while the battle raged around them. Laser weapons fired past them, missing by kilometers. A passing Council warship nearly hit them, but the shuttle pilot was an excellent flyer. He guided the small ship through the chaos and brought it safely to Nexus Station's docking bay. Li Wei and her team moved through the corridors of the station with weapons ready, but not drawn. They passed through areas where Council members had already abandoned their posts, fleeing to escape the incoming Sovereign Fleet. They climbed stairs and moved through passages until they reached the Council chamber. Keeper Vexter stood alone in the vast chamber, watching a display screen that showed the battle outside. He did not turn around when Li Wei entered. He already knew who it was. He had watched Earth's progress carefully, and he had noted the human ambassador's determination. "You have lost," Li Wei said simply. "Your fleets are destroyed or fleeing. The station is surrounded. Your leadership is fractured and afraid. Surrender now, and we will spare your lives. Continue to fight, and everyone here will die." Vexter turned slowly, and his crystalline body glowed with cold fury. "I am Keeper Vexter," he said. "I have ruled for 10,000 years. I have conquered 100 worlds. I have enslaved 1,000,000 species. I will not surrender to a human who comes from a world not even 500 of my years old." Li Wei had prepared for this moment. She had memorized the facts, the statistics, the truth about humanity that the council could not understand. She began to speak, and her words were clear and hard as steel. "You think humans are weak because we are young," she said. "You think we are primitive because our technology is less advanced. But you are wrong. Humans come from Earth, the harshest world in this galactic arm. We survived ice ages that killed every other animal on our world. We survived diseases that wiped out entire civilizations. We learned to make fire and survived without the technology you think is necessary. We learned to farm and survived famines. We learned to build cities and survived earthquakes and storms that destroyed everything we made. We learned to fly and survived war with our own kind. Every step of our existence has been a lesson in survival against impossible odds." Vexter tried to interrupt, but Li Wei continued. "You think humans will break easily because we are fragile," she said. "But you are wrong. A human can survive wounds that would destroy your body. A human can continue fighting even when hope seems lost. A human will sacrifice their own life to protect their children. You have no concept of what you are fighting against. You thought we would be easy to enslave. Instead, you found that a small, primitive species from a death world could defeat your greatest warriors and turn your greatest empires against each other. You have already lost, Keeper. The only question now is whether you lose with honor or lose with the blood of your people on your hands." The chamber fell silent. Through the windows, they could see the Sovereign fleet closing in on the station. Council ships were falling one by one. The sounds of explosions echoed through the structure. Vexter looked at the display screens, at the evidence of his defeat. He was an ancient being, and he understood history. He understood that his era was ending. He could fight and die in this chamber, or he could surrender and perhaps save some portion of his civilization. "You have won," he said finally. His voice was empty, like a crystal song played backwards. "I will order the remaining fleets to stand down. The Council will surrender. You have defeated the greatest powers in the galaxy, and now you will decide what happens next." Li Wei lowered her weapon. "We will decide together," she said. "All of us, all the species, all the voices. That is why we fought. Not to replace one empire with another, but to end empires themselves." Within hours, the Council's forces across the galaxy received orders to surrender. Some forces refused and continued to fight, but without unified command, they were easily defeated. The Sovereign fleet took control of Nexus Station and established a military government. The first step toward building a new galaxy had begun. When Admiral Summers finally walked through the halls of Nexus Station, she found Li Wei standing before a massive window looking out at the stars. Thousands of ships floated around the station, a fleet of multiple species, all under one banner now, the banner of free peoples. "What happens now?" Summers asked. Li Wei smiled slightly. "Now," she said, "the real work begins. We have won the war, but we still have to build the peace. and that will be much harder. 6 months had passed since the fall of Nexus Station. The old Galactic Council no longer existed. In its place, a new governing body was being constructed, one that included representatives from more than 50 civilizations. The process was slow and difficult, filled with arguments and disagreements. But it was happening. President Kevin Harrison sat in the temporary government chamber at Nexus Station, listening as representatives from different species debated the structure of the new order. A Vexthari representative argued for maintaining some of the council's traditions. A Zephyr delegate pushed for complete equality among all species regardless of size or technological advancement. A Meridian administrator suggested a rotating leadership system where power would shift among species every few years. The debates were heated and sometimes angry. Species that had been enslaved for centuries wanted immediate justice and retribution against their former masters. Former members of the council wanted guarantees that they would not be executed or imprisoned forever. Younger species wanted a government based on merit and capability rather than age and tradition. Older species believed that stability required respect for established ways. Through it all, humans found themselves in an unexpected position. They had not been part of the galactic civilization until a few months ago. They had no ancient traditions or established power base. They were the newest arrivals, the youngest species, the ones with the least experience in space governance. But they had also shown something rare: the ability to work with others based on shared values rather than self-interest. Captain Nathan Brooks was asked to serve on the council's leadership committee. He accepted reluctantly. He knew that humans were still learning how to be part of a galactic society. They would make mistakes. But he also knew that humans had learned something valuable through their struggle: how to cooperate with others who were different, how to find common ground when survival depended on it. The trials began 3 months after Nexus Station's fall. The council members and military leaders who had voted to enslave humanity and other species had to answer for their crimes. The trials were held in a massive chamber where representatives of 1,000 different species could observe. The evidence was overwhelming. Video recordings, computer files, testimonies from enslaved species. All of it proved that the council had deliberately oppressed and exploited countless civilizations. Keeper Vexter stood before the tribunal and accepted responsibility for his actions. He did not try to hide or excuse what he had done. He knew that his rule was over, his civilization was diminished, and his name would be remembered as a tyrant. He asked only that some portion of his people be allowed to survive and eventually rebuild. The tribunal considered this request for a long time. In the end, the decision reflected humanity's influence on the new galactic order. Vexter was imprisoned for the remainder of his life, and he would never hold power again. But his people were not destroyed or enslaved in return. The tribunal recognized that destroying the Vexthari as punishment would make the new order just as terrible as the old one. Instead, the Vexthari civilization would be carefully monitored and gradually transformed. Former enslaved species would help guide the Vexthari toward a more just way of living. Some ancient beings disagreed with this decision. "We showed mercy to our enslavers while our people suffered for centuries," one Meridian elder protested. "How is this justice?" An elderly Zephyr representative responded, "Justice is not revenge. Justice is ensuring that the suffering stops and that it never happens again. If we become like those we defeated, then we have won nothing." The words came from a species that had been enslaved for 300 years. Yet they understood that mercy was sometimes stronger than vengeance. This understanding became the foundation of the new galactic order. Not all species supported it, and some refused to join the new governing structure. But those who believed in the principle of transforming the old empires rather than destroying them grew to outnumber those who wanted revenge. On Earth, The celebration was bittersweet. The world had suffered greatly during the invasion and the years of military preparation. Entire cities had been destroyed. Thousands of soldiers had died. Ecological systems had been damaged by the weapons used to defend the planet. But humans had survived. They had done more than survive. They had led the creation of a galactic order based on freedom and justice. Engineer Hannah Pierce was asked to direct the reconstruction effort. She oversaw the rebuilding of damaged cities and the creation of new research facilities. But more importantly, she became a bridge between human technology and alien technology. She worked with Meridian engineers to understand gravitational manipulation. She worked with Zephyr scientists to study biological adaptation. She worked with Tethys researchers to comprehend the deeper principles of advanced physics. Slowly, human technology grew more advanced while remaining true to human values of sustainability and careful innovation. General Patricia Summers retired from active military service, but remained as a military advisor. She helped train the first combined force of human and alien soldiers who would serve as peacekeepers for the new Galactic Order. These soldiers were not conquerors or enforcers of one civilization's will. They were protectors who stood between the strong and the weak, who prevented any single empire from rising up to dominate others. Summers took great pride in this work. Her entire career had been about protecting humanity. Now she was protecting the galaxy. Commander Li Wei became the chief negotiator for the new Galactic Council. She spent her days traveling between different civilizations, working through disputes and helping species that had been enemies for millennia learn to coexist. It was difficult work, sometimes frustrating, sometimes heartbreaking. But it was also important work. The kind of work that would determine whether the new Galactic Order survived or collapsed. Captain Nathan Brooks was offered a position as the first human member of the Council's Inner Circle, the group of 5 leaders who made the most important decisions for the entire galaxy. He accepted the position with the understanding that his term would last only 5 years, after which a representative from another species would take the position. This rotating leadership system ensured that no single civilization could accumulate permanent power. One day, while reviewing the records of the new council, Brooks looked at the list of all the species that had joined the alliance. More than 60 different civilizations, each one unique, each one with its own history and culture and values. All of them united by a single idea, that no species should dominate or enslave any other, and that the combined strength of free peoples was greater than any empire could ever be. He thought about humanity's journey. Just a few years ago, humans had not even known that other civilizations existed. They were alone on Earth, developing their technology in isolation, unaware that they were surrounded by a galaxy full of life. Then came the shock of first contact, the terror of invasion, the knowledge that an entire civilization was deemed unworthy of freedom. But through that dark time, humans had learned something that most galactic civilizations had forgotten: that a people united by shared values and mutual respect could accomplish things that seemed impossible. A young student from the Zephyr species came to visit the human ambassador's office. Her name was Kethis, and she was studying the history of the invasion and the alliance. She had 1,000 questions about humans and Earth. She wanted to know what it felt like to be enslaved, what it felt like to fight against impossible odds, what it felt like to win when victory seemed impossible. "Why do you ask?" Li Wei said gently. "Your people were enslaved longer than humanity was even aware of slavery. Because my people have learned to hate our former masters," Kethis said. "But you humans have not. You fought against them, you defeated them, but you did not destroy them. You did not become like them. I want to understand how you did that." Li Wei thought about the question carefully. She thought about the soldiers who had died in the invasion, the cities that had burned, the families that had been broken. She thought about the hatred that humans could have felt, the desire for vengeance that would have been so easy to justify. Humans come from a world that tried to kill us, Li Wei said finally. Every day of our existence on Earth was a struggle for survival. We fought against hunger and disease and cold and creatures that hunted us. Over time, we learned something important, that we could only survive if we worked together. If we turned on each other, if we fought for revenge instead of for survival, we would die. That lesson was written into human blood and bone. When the Council tried to enslave us, we remembered that lesson. We had to work with other species, even species that were very different from us. We could not afford hatred or vengeance. We could only afford cooperation and hope. Kefis listened carefully to every word. Then she asked one more question. Do you think we can build a galaxy where everyone lives by that idea? Where cooperation is stronger than hatred? Li Wei smiled. I think we have to try. That is what this new council means. It is an experiment. We are trying to build something that the galaxy has never seen before. It might fail. We might make terrible mistakes. But we are trying, and we are doing it together.